am Dr. Myrtle Means. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm the author of The Recipe for Ecstasy, What Women Want Sexual and Relationship Satisfaction. I want to start with telling you a little bit about my research and how it lays the foundation for this presentation and for my understanding of how it will help you move past divorce. You open your eyes really wide, it will be very relevant to you. I know you're the only man in the room, it'll be very, very relevant to you.
In the wrong room for a minute.
You're in the right place.
Maybe most relevant.
As I tell people who want to read my book, it's about the women who are looking for the right ingredients, but the men who want the inside scoop about what's on their list. And so if you're trying to recover from a divorce, I know you'll be looking eventually, and you should know what she's looking for, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So my book is a revised copy of my dissertation. I conducted some research and partial fulfillment of the requirements for my PhD in clinical psychology. And I was interested in finding out from women, in their own words, about the things that satisfied them sexually and in their relationships. And so I asked them to tell me in your own words about your most sexually satisfying experiences. Tell me about your partner. Was it a committed relationship? Was it a casual relationship? Was it a one-night stand? How did you feel about yourself? How did you feel about your partner? Did you obtain climax? And would you choose this partner to marry and to have children with? I was also interested in understanding the relationship between intimacy, emotional intimacy, passion, and commitment to sexual satisfaction. I was looking for the greatest predictors, and expecting that intimacy, emotional intimacy, would be the greatest predictor. And I want you all to remember this as I talk to you this evening, because I'm going to go back to it when I tell you about some of the ingredients that the women identified in their most sexually satisfying experiences. I looked at 4 different groups of women. I looked at single, married, with and without children. Every woman had her own chapter and every woman had her own recipe. They were all looking for something a little different. So that laid the foundation for the work that I did. As it relates to my preparation for this presentation in particular, as a clinical psychologist, I have treated many individuals who struggle with the question about divorce, as well as treated individuals who've gone through with divorce, their children, worked with couples, trying to blend their families with stepchildren. So I have a great deal of experience and a lot of different perspectives. I am married. My husband is in his second marriage, so I watched him go through his divorce. We have a stepchild from his first marriage, and so I also had to blend my family. We've had 2 children together. So I come from many different perspectives. I am a child product of divorce. My parents were divorced when I was 13 years old. And so I took all of these different perspectives to integrate them today for the presentation that I'm going to give you. I know that recovering from divorce is about loss, first and foremost. It's about loss. There's a lot of grief, often trauma. And I think the grieving process is a very important process to go through. And people ask, what does that mean? And I always respond with, allow yourself to be sad, because that is the natural response to loss. And if you fight it, it will absolutely fight you back, and it will be sure to win. So, moving on from loss, there is recovery. There should always be recovery, and it takes time to heal. I often tell my clients, it is like breaking a bone. It takes time to heal, but there's always evidence once the healing process has completed. You can always tell. You take an x-ray, you'll see the scar, but over time, it won't hurt as badly. On the other side of recovery, there should always be hope. There is no good without bad. There is no life without death. There should never, ever be loss without hope and excitement for the future. Because on the other side of the grieving, there should be some excitement about still being here, standing up and having something to look forward to. Your future, your life, your love, and your sexual satisfaction. I think those are very, very important things. For some individuals, it's been years since they've been out dating. Some people got married in their late teens, early 20s. And they divorced in their 40s or 50s, some 60. And then they're wondering, have my preferences changed? Have I changed? What I'm looking for, how has it evolved? I think it's really important that you first take a personal inventory and ask yourself those questions. What are you looking for? Who are you looking for? I put relationships into two categories, casual or committed. And they don't easily go from casual to committed. So I think it's really important that a person understand what they're looking for. Emotionally know what you're looking for. Are you looking for a commitment? Are you looking for something long-term or just something for fun, a companion, someone to go to the movies with, hang out with, dance? It's just something easy. Are you looking for true intimacy, someone you can share the rest of your life with? I know that a lot of people who've gone through divorce approach this with a sense of fear and trepidation, and it is difficult to allow yourself to become vulnerable again. But it is very important. It is the only way that we grow. We have to take risk. Growth comes through vulnerability. But I do not believe you should do it quickly, especially coming from the place of divorce. You take your time. You ask yourself questions along the way. How does this feel? How does that feel? I think it is also important to know about your physical needs. And so just think about your emotional needs. Think about what kind of relationship. But you also need to know about your physical needs. Oftentimes in marriage, there are three big conflicts: sex, money, and kids. And it is often that partners have different appetites for sexuality, and it can cause a great deal of conflict. So you need to know what your appetite is like. What kind of things do you long for? You need to know what attracts you, not just physically, although I know attraction starts externally. You need to know what attracts you internally as well. Are you looking for someone who's kind or funny, smart, adventurous, outgoing? Are you shy or quiet and you would prefer someone who might be the same? Really, really ask yourself the question, what am I looking for? After physical attraction, there is chemistry. Chemistry is a mutual attraction. It is when you put two people in the same place at the same time. It can't be cooked up over the cell towers, not over the internet. It is about face-to-face interaction. How do we interact together? Is our conversation easy? Is it fun? Is it strained? Am I searching for words? Or is there that instant spark? Now, some of it, again, is physical, but some of it is also emotional. From chemistry, we go to connection and then on to commitment. When I think about connection, this is when you really start to share who you are and there's a gathering of information. You should ask questions and you should be very specific and give clear and direct answers. And the person who is interested in you should be doing the same thing. They should also be asking questions and giving clear and direct information. It's like gathering information. I liken it to wine tasting. It's a slow process. You look at the wine, you smell it, you swirl it, you sip it, then you swallow. It is the question, do I want another glass, a bottle, a case, or a cellar full to last a lifetime, right? So you decide, do you want another date? Is it good for a couple weeks, a couple months, a few years, or forever? So that is the objective when you're out dating. You're asking yourself, will this satisfy my appetite? I said that connection was next, but we're under the category of attraction and chemistry. And I want to talk just a little bit about sexuality and the sexual response cycle, because again, in my study, one of the variables I looked at was orgasmic responsiveness, and there's oftentimes an inequity between men and women in responsiveness. And so I thought it was important to talk about the sexual response cycle because at one of my last presentations, a woman came up to me and asked me, what is an orgasm? And because she asked that question, I thought, well, I can't take it for granted that everyone knows what an orgasm is. And so I tell you about the stages of the sexual response cycle. The first stage being the excitement phase, which is characterized by a subjective experience of arousal, and there are all sorts of physiological changes that take place. Increased heart rate, muscle tension, your breath quickens, there is increased blood flow to the genitals, which leads to vaginal lubrication in women and penile tumescence in men, or an erection. The vaginal lubrication and expansion of the vagina in the women to accommodate the penis. After the excitement phase, there is the plateau phase, which is very similar to the initial phase of excitement. It is indistinguishable in terms of the characteristics. It is just a continuation, a building of one's pleasure, sense of pleasure, again with the increased heart rate, blood pressure, shortened breath. And this builds into the climax of an orgasm, which is the release of sexual tension. For men, it is characterized by often an ejaculation, not always, they're not the same experience. For women and men, it's characterized by contractions of the reproductive and the pelvic muscles as well as the perineal structures. There is sometimes an ejaculation for women. Women can have the ability to produce multiple orgasms. This is a response that men are most often not capable of. And then after the orgasm phase, there is the resolution phase. This phase is very different for men and for women. For men, there is a refractory period, a period in which he is no longer able to be aroused or to obtain orgasm. Depending on the age and stage of life, the health of the man, medication, alcohol, drug use, this refractory period can go from several minutes to several days to several weeks. And for women, our resolution period is just a cool down period. We can become aroused and enter into the phase of orgasm within any time in that period. This is one of the reasons why we are able to obtain multiple orgasms and men are not. I want to move on as we're talking about dating and what you should be looking for in the process. I looked at 4 different groups of women, as I told you, but I'm going to tell you about the group as a whole. There were 105 women, and the things that they identified as really, really important to them. Mood was one of the first ingredients that was identified by the women in my study, and the mood captured things like romance, playful, safe. It's really important. It was about how she felt. The next ingredient was setting. It was really important, the place. Sometimes it was outside, or it was away from work, away from kids, away from the home, away from the phone. After awayness is what I call it, there was nature of the relationship. And for most of the women, the nature of the relationship that stood out as being most important was committed. As you recall, I stated that there were some relationships that were casual, there were some that were one-night stands, but the nature of the relationship being committed was most important to women. After the nature of the relationship, there was love. And in my study, I defined love according to Sternberg's triangular theory of love. Love being defined as intimacy, that's emotional closeness, passion, the desire to be physically close to someone, and commitment, the desire to stay together. After love, intimacy was the next ingredient that was identified. Closeness is very significant when it comes to maintaining the bond between a man and a woman, what you share, interest, your words, communication, conflict, very important. I believe conflict can be a great source of intimacy if handled correctly. Many people avoid conflict because they feel like it is destructive. Some people have had bad histories in terms of their own relationship, or the foundation for conflict laid from the families that they came from. They've never seen it handled in a productive way. But I believe that conflict brings 2 people who are on 2 totally different ends to a closer place. If it is productive, you now are closer together, and it is very, very important. After intimacy, the next ingredient that women identified was arousal, taking you back to the stages of the sexual response cycle. How excited am I? How prepared am I to be in this sexual experience? Has he taken the time to excite me? The next ingredient was orgasm responsiveness, which kind of makes sense. It's right from being aroused to excitement. And the last 2 ingredients, technique and timing, how he did what he did and how much time he took. I want to take a few minutes and see if anybody has any questions so far about any of the things that I've said. My next list of ingredients I consider to be optional ingredients. They were his focus on her, the kind of time that he took to give her what she was looking for. If he would ask her questions about what she wanted and made sure that it was important for him to give her those things. Sexual abandon, the ability to express yourself freely without feelings of guilt or shame or judgment was very important as well to women. After that, multiple orgasms, and then finally, quality of relatedness, mutuality, meaning that he would give to her and she would give to him, and there will be a reciprocal exchange of pleasures between them. That these things were very, very important when it came to sexuality and sexual satisfaction and relationship satisfaction. I also want to ask the audience to think. Remember, I said there were 4 different groups of women: single, married, with and without children. If you had to take your guess, what would you say? Who would you say was the most sexually satisfied out of the 4 groups of women?
The single ones.
Single, with or without children, the 4 groups.
Without.
Single without. Why would you say that?
Because if she has nothing that's preventing her from getting somebody. No responsibilities.
Okay.
Disagree.
What would you say? Tell me why you disagree.
I would say single with children.
Okay.
Single with children. Tell me why. I'm really interested in hearing why, because some of my findings
Me too. I wanna
really
know.
contradicted what I thought they would be, and I'm going to tell you why in just a minute. Tell me why. Why do you say that?
Because women with children who are single probably have less time, and they focus more on what their needs are and their desires are, and if those needs and desires aren't being met, they move on. And they probably are more selective with, whom they spend their time with, and they're probably more direct in terms of expressing what their needs are.
Okay.
Okay. I can appreciate that.
The most sexually satisfied group is married without children. They were the most sexually satisfied group. They had the greatest level of intimacy and the greatest level of commitment in their relationships. Passion was the same across the board, interestingly enough. Level of orgasmic responsiveness was the same across the board for all 4 groups of women. I hypothesized that there would be an interaction between the marital and parental groups, in that sexual satisfaction would increase sexual satisfaction in married women and decrease sexual satisfaction in single women. I'll tell you a little bit of why I hypothesized this. One, when I started my PhD, when I got my PhD, I was 27. So when I started my dissertation, I was 26 years old. Never been married, didn't have any kids. I also used theoretical framework of psychoanalytic and evolutionary theories to shape my research. And according to these theories, women feel a sense of inadequacy because of a lack of phallus, penis in me. I'm sure everybody's heard about it. And that we have a desire to obtain a sense of narcissistic confirmation, and how we do this is by obtaining a male partner and subsequently bearing a child. It is also thought that women have a sense of inadequacy in terms of their relationship with their primary caregiver mother, that she is an inadequate love object, and that she then shifts her interest from mother to father. And as a part of the resolution of this electrocomplex, she goes on to identify with her mother and then chooses to find a mate like her father instead of wanting to possess the father. There are theories of primary femininity that suggest that to be female is just that, to be born a woman and the ability to possess a vagina and to have children, and that is what is paramount as it relates to female sexuality and female sexual satisfaction. There is enough evidence in the literature to suggest that all of this has a bit of an influence on sexuality and sexual satisfaction in women. So I started to think about, okay, so if we are looking for a mate, if that is what is important and we want to bear children, then how do we go about that? That turned me to evolutionary theory and theories of mate selection. According to evolutionary theory, our primary goal as a species is to reproduce and make babies. And to do that, we have what is called a pair bond. That is behavior between a man and a woman that is characteristic of monogamous species to support the idea of reproductive success. They include things like love, commitment, sexual prowess, loyalty. So we have that, and then we have the pleasure bond, which is a person's desire to commit to the pleasure of another. It's an unselfish choice to give pleasure to another person. So the pair bond and the pleasure bond. So these are the things that directed. These are things that directed my study. So interestingly enough, as you said, single women with children, they were second in line for sexual satisfaction, followed by single women without children, and last on the list, married women with children. And I had to really understand this. And I think that you are right in terms of the single women with children. They have the pleasure piece first. They're looking for excitement, variation in the sex act, newness. That was one of their ingredients on their recipe for ecstasy. They were looking for arousal, orgasms. Love and intimacy were on their list, but they were at the bottom of the list. They were more focused on the in-the-moment ingredients. And I also believe that they were second in line because they have obtained 2 out of the 3 variables for love: intimacy and commitment. There is no greater bond between a mother and a child, and no greater commitment if it's done properly. So looking at women with children, how they move to the end of the list, it helps me understand, one, the level of sexual satisfaction, but also how it predisposes married women to divorce, because they find themselves often unsatisfied. And they're unsatisfied for many reasons. And it's not just because they're so busy and they have laundry and groceries and homework and jobs of their own, but sometimes it's about what they do and do not get from their partner. Married women have expectations. They want partnership. They want resources. They, again, according to mate selection, we're looking for resources like time, energy, guidance, direction. Love, commitment, and intimacy, those are resources too. And I think that as children are added to the mix, it really puts a strain on marriage. And if you don't figure out how to work through the conflict, how to have some mutuality as it relates to the work that must be done in a family, that it really compromises not only sexual relationship, but also the relationship as a whole. It can really cause some problems. So as I think about dating, and I think about you all going back out into the dating world, I offer you some advice, that it is really important to first maintain some hope. The dating process can be a very disappointing and frustrating one. And to be efficient, that it doesn't take a long time to figure out whether or not someone excites you. If there's a spark, chemistry, remember, is automatic. Either you have it or you don't. It is not something that cooks up over time. It can decrease and disappear over time, but it is not something that cooks up over time. Either you have it or you don't. So be efficient. It minimizes the time, the disappointment, the frustration, the heartache. It allows you to get closer to the one that you're looking for, and I think it's really important to keep that in mind. I say use all your resources, coworkers, friends, the internet. I know that it's a different world in terms of dating. You have to be careful because I know that there can be a lot of dishonesty and disguise on the internet, but it is a resource for you today if you're willing to go through the effort and the time and some of the disappointment and frustration. You might find the one that you're looking for. It gives you access. So I say use all your resources. Most importantly, you have to be an active participant. You have to be an active participant. You have to use your senses. You have to use your eyes, your ears. I say taste, I say smell, I say touch. Get close to the one that you're looking for. Pay attention. Don't be limited in terms of focusing on the physical aspects only or the emotional aspects only. That if you want both, be honest about it, because remember, again, relationships don't often go from casual to committed. So be clear on what you're looking for. I want to take some time and again see if you all have any questions. If you don't have any questions, I picked some excerpts out of my book that I'd like to read. And I've chosen the part about, I specifically looked at stocking the pantry, personal ingredients and preferences for people who are getting back into dating and how to go about the process. And then I looked at another piece of the book that I thought would be relevant. And if we have time, I'll get to it. If you're interested in hearing it, you can tell me what you think. Stocking the pantry, personal ingredients and preferences. Before you go out looking for the person you want to share your life with, you must make some important decisions. What are you looking for? Make a list. Just as when shopping for groceries, you don't usually look for things you already have unless it's something you can never have too much of. Intelligence, kindness, love. So check the refrigerator and your pantry. Do a personal inventory. This helps to make informed decisions. It can save you a lot of time, energy, money, and heartache. Here is my personal inventory. I am bright, sexy, and stylish. I got a mean shoe game. I'm a good cook with a big butt and strong legs, according to my husband. Something I should already know, given that I tear it up on the dance floor every time I get. I love to shop. I have nice teeth, long hair. I love to eat. Sex is a hobby, an important one. I'm bossy, exacting, demanding. I like nice things. I'm a great listener who has lots to say. I love to share and have fun. People love to talk to me, especially about sex. According to Beyonce, I'm a diva. A diva is a female version of a hustler. I like to make things happen. Whatever I want, I go after. I wanted to get out of the ghetto. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted a family. I also knew what I wanted when I was looking for my husband. I wanted a man who was tall and rich and chocolate. I don't mean to make this sound easy. It was not. I went through considerable amount of trial and error. More error. There were many unsavory mixes before I found someone just right for me. But knowing exactly what I was looking for sure made things easier. Women especially have hurdles to jump when it comes to selecting a partner. Topping the list of challenges is finding an eligible man. People have different tastes. Going outside of the race gives you more options from which to choose, but be mindful, however, that mixing up flavors complicates the recipe. Whatever your preferences are, know them. Know the things that your recipe for ecstasy cannot do without, as well as the things that you can substitute or sacrifice. For example, when making meatloaf, you can use milk, water, or apple juice. You can even do without the breadcrumbs, but you cannot make meatloaf without meat. So if you don't want a mate with kids, don't date a man with kids. If you prefer a mate who doesn't drink at all but could tolerate a social drinker, be honest about it. First, be honest with yourself, then be honest with him before you stock your pantry with his items. If you don't eat pork, then don't buy pork chops. If you prefer fresh veggies, you don't stock your pantry with canned goods. Don't bring into your kitchen things you ultimately don't want to eat. Skip the sales, the buy one, get one free. Shop for quality and for taste. Some people shop at the local chain grocer, while others prefer specialty markets. Wherever you choose, remember, where you shop dictates what you bring home. These are the ingredients I had in mind. I wanted him tall and handsome. This ain't no cliche either. I like him fine. For some, physical attractiveness is not a priority as long as a person is not too hard on the eyes. And if this is what works for you, that's fine. And I was not willing to compromise what was on the inside either. This is why people thought I'd never be married. Too choosy. He had to be smart. I like to talk, and sometimes I get deep. I needed someone who could go the depths. He had to be ambitious, if not already a success. I like nice things, kind, loyal, and loving. I wanted someone I could share my life with, a friend, a husband, a lover. I wanted all these things. Most of all, I wanted a partner for life. For me, a partner fits all of the following definitions. 1, a person with whom I will dance through life as a spouse. 2, one who plays on the same team as the other, might have different roles but the same goal. And 3, one of 2 persons contractually associated as joint principals in a business, a marital contract for the business of love and sharing one's life. You need to understand that people have preferences, and it's okay if a person is not interested in you because you don't tempt their taste buds. Don't take it personally. Although it may feel like rejection, it is not necessarily so. Think of it more as an expression of preference. If I don't like fish, it doesn't matter how it's served up. I don't want to eat it. People have the right to send a dish back if it's not what they ordered. So go ahead, take another look at the menu. You just might find the right dish this time. Any thoughts?
That's a great analogy.
I like the way you
That's
did that.
really, that helps clarify.
Okay. I have another, we have a few more minutes, so I have another, I'm going to read from chapter 6, Take Out, Single and Mothering. From the kitchen of single women with children, the ingredients for sexual satisfaction are as follows. Variation in the sex act, 70%. Newness, 52%. Nature of the relationship, 41%. Positive self-regard, 41%. Mood, 37%. Orgasm intensity, 37%. And setting, 30%. This comes specifically from variation in the sex act. For this group of 27 women, variation in the sex act was the main ingredient identified in 70% of the narratives. Variation in the sex act for single women with children included accessories, anal sex, oral sex, and a variety of sexual positions. For example, when my partner oiled me all over, kissed my back, neck, oral sex, and tried anal sex. In the following narrative, the guy dressed his meat before he ate it. I had gone over my partner's house. He decided to try something different, so he blindfolded me and laid me on the bed. He spread my legs and began to shave, trim the hair in my vaginal area. After he cleaned off the shaving cream, he began to lick my private area until I had an orgasm. Then he took a vibrator and moved it all around in the right ways, and I reached orgasm again. He took off the blindfold and he held me upside down while he fucked me till my third orgasm. In the next narrative, there are several components to the sexual experience, including foreplay, mutual gratification, orgasm responsiveness, different positions, various sex acts, and accessories. For this woman, it was important to be well accessorized, but the most salient feature of her erotic experience was the variety. Variety is the spice of life. Without it, things get stale, like a bag of chips open all night. Watch a little porn, add a splash of fantasy to your reality. A dose of doggy style to go with the moans and groans. No one desires chicken every night of the week, so where is the beef? Maybe this woman has it. Any questions, thoughts?
That makes dating a little more interesting.
Pardon me?
That makes dating a little more interesting.
It is. It's fun. I mean,
Yeah.
I know that, again, there's some trepidation, there's some fear. You all have been hurt and trying to figure out how to move on, but I tell you that it's possible. Like I said, I am a child product of divorce. My parents divorced when I was 13 years old. One of my primary objectives, as I said, was to get out of the ghetto. Well, here I am, out of the ghetto. But I had to have hope. I had to recover. I had to go through what they went through. I mean, I had my own process. They had their process. I had my process as a child. You all have your process. Of course, you know, I had some fear about dating as well. It didn't turn out that well from the house that I came from. But it was a primary objective of mine to find someone who I could share the rest of my life with. And I believe that if you want something, you can have it. It's just like putting a recipe together. If you can read, you can cook. And that's just how it is.
Seems easier for some people than others. Is that?
Wow, what makes you say that?
Well, just because, I don't know, it seems like people just get right back into it. Like, a lot of people that I know, they just, I don't know, I tend to take more time and think things out a little more. And then some people jump right into a relationship, and I just, not that it's bad, I just.
Well, it depends. I think that some people start to grieve the loss of their marriage well before a divorce. I mean, some people have been disconnected for years and holding on for the children, waiting for the right financial moment. And so they are ready when the divorce is final because they've been processing and recovering and thinking and going through their own personal pantry for a long time. And then there are those who are using dating as a bit of a distraction to help them to avoid the process of grieving, which is not a good idea. I'm all for casual sex and fun if you're responsible about it. However, it is very important to grieve, and I do believe that if you get involved in relationships too quickly, you're already vulnerable. You're already open because you're going through a trauma. This is not a process of vulnerability that takes place over time because I've come to trust you and get to know you and I've decided to let my guards down because you make me feel good. This is vulnerability that comes because I've been hit with a bulldozer and I'm laying flat on my back, so I'm wide open. It's a very, very big difference between the two. And so you have to be really careful, but this comes again from knowing yourself. You know, I think about the stages of grieving, the denial and shock. I can't believe it. Thought we'd be married forever, and then the anger that comes, and the fighting and the conflict. You know, then to the bargaining. Well, maybe if we tried this, or if we tried this, if I do this differently, that things could last. You know, then there's the guilt. You know, the guilt that you feel, and then often depression, and then finally there's acceptance and hope. So you should be going through those stages of grief, and you should know if you are aware of what's going on. You know, depression is very common when it comes to grief. It's very common. Feeling sad all the time, no interest and motivation in things. The things that used to bring you pleasure, you have no interest in reading, talking to your girlfriends. But it's important that you don't isolate and that you find ways to comfort yourself. And I think find a way that you can comfort yourself that doesn't make you feel badly afterwards. Don't go and spend $2,000 at the mall and go on a binge and have a lot of casual sex, that take risks that are going to make you feel guilty afterwards. Find something that makes you feel good. Journal, talk to your friends, take yourself on a long vacation. Do something that makes you feel good, to prepare you, to comfort you. Those kind of things. You'll know when you're ready. And if you don't know if you're ready, then you talk to someone. You know, like myself, I'm a clinical psychologist. People come all the time. Like I said, I've talked to people who've been divorced and people who have made it all the way to the courtroom and still left out married, still working on it. I know it's a very difficult decision to make. So sometimes you need someone to talk to. People who don't want to talk to clinical psychologists, they turn to their pastors or their priest and someone who they can confide in and trust to help them sort out internally just what's going on. So I think that if you pay attention, you'll know. And if it takes you more time than it takes others, then it takes you more time. It's a very individual process. Grief is a very individual process. Any other thoughts, comments?
I was going to say, I'm frustrated in the dating scene. Well, I was frustrated in my marriage because intellectually, I need somebody that can carry on a conversation and, you know, stimulates me intellectually and stuff. And I'm finding it even worse now that I'm divorced, is that so many men, people I come across, they can't spell, they can't do grammar, they barely got out of high school, they don't have a job, they've been divorced 3 times, they're homeless, they don't have a driver's license, and they're fat, and you know, they got an alcohol problem. I mean, just a whole total loser, and they definitely don't have it, you know, between their ears, and so I can't get past the whole intellectual thing to get on to the rest of it. I mean, I can't find anybody who's got it together, you know, much less the fact that I don't have it together either, but it's very frustrating.
About where you would go to
Right.
find the person.
Right, that's what I was trying to get
Right.
some kind of.
That's where I was just going to say, remember where you shop dictates what you bring
Right.
home.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm thinking about where do you find eligible
Educated
basketball,
people
right?
that
The bookstore, right. the library, places where you might find books, events that call for cultural events, things that call for some intellectual stimulation. I mean, there are cultural events and art events, things that are held around the city that only attract certain kinds of individuals. So I say you do your research, you look, you see, where is the meeting of the minds going to be, whether there's going to be this conference for attorneys over here, or there's going to be this group of teachers here. There's seminars all over the place for all sorts of things. Take a class yourself, just for fun. Other people do that in terms of some of the community organizations. I have clients, I just want to learn Spanish, so there's a Spanish class offered at the community center, and that's where I'm going to be hanging out. And sometimes you might get lucky bumping into someone at the grocery store, but I would also say ask your friends. Do you know your co-workers, someone who's eligible, who's educated? Pay attention, you know. That's how I met my husband. I met him at the gym, and he was a personal trainer, and he approached me, and I did not have any interest. I was studying for my boards for my state exam, and I was like, personal trainer did not meet the bill for me. He was fine, he was gorgeous, absolutely, fit clearly, but I couldn't trust that he was educated because he was working as a personal trainer at the gym, but I heard him speak to someone. His vocabulary, I was like, what is he doing with that kind of vocabulary?
As a trainer.
Right, what is he doing with that kind of vocabulary as a trainer? Right?
As soon as they open their mouth or something,
You listen, I get it.
I know. See,
That was his second job. He was working on his master's degree. He was a teacher. I was looking to change his career. I'm like, okay, now that makes a little bit more sense. That's why he's here at the gym. So, I mean, you have to pay attention, and you have to be able, again, to deal with the disappointment and the frustration and not let it get in the way. And if you are efficient, if you keep it moving, oh, no, he's not the one. And people, they wait. Oh, well, maybe we can do this, and we can go here, and
My mother
maybe.
used to tell me it's like a bus, you know, you miss one, you know, it's just, another one's coming, you know.
Right.
So, but,
You have to work at it. You have to continue to
and
work
then
it
trying
through.
to find somebody who, like, I'm really into nutrition and eating right and, you know, that, trying to find
Go to
somebody
a
who.
health food store.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I do.
People.
Whole Foods in Ann Arbor is my favorite place, but somebody who, you know, cares about their body and cares about that. I mean, like you say, you're not gonna find them in a club, in a bar,
Right.
you know, sitting on a bar stool.
But you might find them at a gym.
You'll find them at a health club.
Right.
Yeah.
You might find them at the health club, at the health food store, and you will find them at particular times. You're going to find them early in the morning before they go to work,
Right.
or you're going to find them in the middle of the day because they're coming for lunch, or you're going to find them after work at 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. So,
Weekends,
right.
stuff.
But you have to,
Yeah.
you know, you have to be, you know, creative.
It's a research project.
Right. It is. It's work.
I talked to some guy who was looking at fish.
Everyone come to the main auditorium for our final speaker of the day?
Okay.
5 minutes?
Yeah, I ran into one guy who asked me what kind of frozen fish to buy at the store, you know. And as it was a 2-for-1 deal. So he bought one and then he gave me the other, you know, which was good. But it was nice to have a conversation about somebody that cared about what they're, you know.
Yes. The reading.
and stuff. So.
Yes. You had a question or comment?
I was recently talking with a group of friends, men who were divorced, and it was so interesting to hear their perspective about dating again and having sexual relations. And they were talking about how random sex was just not fulfilling to them.
That surprised me. I thought that's
Really?
I was just shocked.
But you're talking to a group of men who are older, right?
They were all in their mid-40s.
Yes, right. I'm doing research right now. I'm actually asking men to fill out the same surveys that I gave to women, and I'm asking women to do it again as well. Eventually, I want to do a male companion book and a couples book. But I'm interested to see. But I think it depends on the age and stage of life. I think that men in their 20s, maybe even some in their early 30s, they can be more interested in physical pleasure. I do also believe that men and women think of sex differently. For us, women, it's a top-down process. Stimulate my mind and you can stimulate my body.
Right.
For men, it is a bottom-up process. stimulate my body and you can stimulate my mind. And so I think that as you go through this, ages and stages of life, men in their late 30s, early 40s, they're also looking. But I can't wait to get to the data. I've been collecting data for a year and a half. I really haven't even looked at it. I go and peek every now and again to see how different it will be. But again, the ingredients for love are intimacy, passion, and commitment. And I believe that the foundation for love is important for all of us, men or women. We have very similar developmental processes. In some ways, our first love is our primary love, mother, our first primary caregiver. That is our first love. It's the first person we have intimacy with, commitment, trust, and it is the first place we release our sexual energies through feeding and how we're taken care of. And so the foundation is the same for us. We seek intimacy. Men, they develop to separate from mother, where women develop to identify with her. And so we do diverge in some ways, but I think the foundation of intimacy is the same. We all want eventually to get to that place where you feel connected and one, that sense of trust. And ideally we all have that. I know everyone doesn't. Some people grow up in abusive relationships with their parents, neglectful relationships. Again, it's the foundation of my book and my research, and I take the reader on a journey. Think about what you learned about love. What did you see at home? How did your parents treat you? How did they treat each other? Did you see displays of affection? Was there age-appropriate sexual education in the home? Did you learn about your body? According to the psychoanalytic theory I was telling you about, they say that there is a lack of awareness of the vagina until puberty. How can that be? If you're parenting, it should be amongst your daughter's first words, vagina. It should be amongst a boy's first words, penis. It just should be. It's a part of the body, like the eye and the elbow. Why would you leave it out? And so it really depends on what you learn. It lays a foundation and that's one reason why a lot of people have difficulty in their adult love relationships, because their foundation is flawed, it's weak, it has cracks. Some people take the time to come and talk to someone like myself and figure out what those cracks are, and some people just keep building on unstable ground and the house keeps falling down. Thank you all for coming. You can find me. I just want to let you know that you all can find me on Facebook, Dr. Myrtle Means. It's probably just Myrtle Means. And my website is therecipeforecstasy.com. I'm going to leave some of my books in the bookstore, but they're $20. And you can get them from the website. It's on Kindle. It's on Barnes & Noble. It's at barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com. You all been great.
Thank you.